Hello, everyone. My name is Jasha Lyons-Echohawk, and I am the Census Community Builder with Together Oklahoma and Oklahoma Policy Institute. And we're joining you live this Sunday, June 28th, with a panel of these amazing student leaders at Oklahoma Panhandle State University. And we're going to be talking once again about the census. So we just want to touch base on why we're doing this event virtually. It's especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has impacted every community across Oklahoma as well as the nation. And so we're still honoring the socially distant practices, and just want to raise up all those public health officials, all of our essential workers, grocery store workers, our workers in the factories, those food producers, our workers out in the fields, our delivery workers, United States Postal Service workers, all of you who probably were not available to take any kind of break. And then also with our work within Oklahoma Policy Institute, we're constantly, continually encouraging equity in policy in areas that affect education, healthcare, making sure that the criminal justice system is a system of justice, just all the ways that we can, and understanding that because of this pandemic, it is definitely highlighting the gaps that we've always had in all kinds of policies. So we appreciate you all out there, and we appreciate all of you that are able to join us today. Thank you for shouting out. Yeah. We've done these events since Census Day kicked off April 1st. April 3rd was our first virtual event, and we continue to bring you census events about 12 weeks later. We will continue to do virtual events just throughout until census stops in October. So I want to remind everybody, just the link or the sign below says you are eligible for up to for 1 of 3 gift cards that we will give away for anyone who you'll be put into a drawing for. Anyone who comments and shares this event. We need to have all of your people, all of our people, not just aware of this event, but the purpose is to encourage census participation in the great state of Oklahoma. So what is the census? Well, for those of you, there's Enrique. Good to see you.
So afternoon, guys. How's it going?
Yeah,
how are you guys? My apologies. We were doing another census event, and it kind of got a little bit longer than I expected. We were playing Sensoteria, which I will explain it to you guys later. Good afternoon, everyone. Go ahead.
Good to see you. Yeah, I haven't introduced anybody yet. Just barely kicked it off. So the census is a population count of everyone living in the United States and its 5 U.S. territories. So physical bodies is what we're counting, regardless of immigration status and regardless of age. So as long as your babies were born on or before April 1st of this year, 2020, they count. So 0+ years of age, everybody living in your home needs to be counted. The census occurs every 10 years. So this census is a population count of federal funds that will be distributed annually for the next 10 years. So that's why we want to get this right. We want 100% of our population counted so that it reflects in all the ways possible when it comes to money being distributed into our communities. You'll learn more about that as we go along with our event today. Who counts? Again, anybody living in the United States as of April 1st, 2020. Why the census? Well, it definitely impacts social services, healthcare, education, transportation, roads, business development, marketing. It's a lot of things that affects your everyday life, your quality of life. Census data is what's used to ensure equitable policy. So if we're not being counted, we're not seen, and we're not represented in the ways we need to be. So moving along, I'm going to introduce these amazing folks that are surrounding me right now. We'll start with Yesenia, right? Yesenia Kino, goes by Yessie. She has lived in the Oklahoma Panhandle her whole life. She graduated from Hooker High School in 2018 and is currently attending Oklahoma Panhandle State University in Goodwell, Oklahoma as a first-generation student. She majors in mathematics and minors in education. She is a future high school educator. Growing up, she has always been very active in school and continues to be in college. Her parents immigrated from Mexico to the United States to provide a better life for their family. This is the reason why she advocates for minority groups. Stacy Jimenez lives in a tiny town named Adams, Oklahoma. She graduated Hooker High School in 2018 and is currently attending Oklahoma Panhandle State University in Goodwell, Oklahoma, also as a first-generation student. She's majoring in biology with a minor in education to go into the public health and medical fields. While in this pandemic, she has realized that being a doctor was not the only career that she wanted to strive in. Her true passion was to teach others, especially minority groups, about the healthcare system and to make a change into the system as well. Now she wants to become an advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves. Jorge Vienes is 20 years old, born and raised in Hooker, Oklahoma. He graduated from Hooker High School in 2018 and is currently attending Oklahoma Panhandle State University, majoring in elementary education. His mother came to this country from Mexico for a better life. He says, representation for minorities matters because we are growing quickly where too soon we will be the majority. No other country has a diversity like this one. That is why the census is very important. And finally, our MC for the evening, Enrique Franz, is the station manager and radio show morning host for La Mexicana. I probably didn't say that right. But a Kansas City station, a station located in Kansas, which is not too far from where these folks are located out in the Panhandle. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and let Enrique say a few remarks about why he's joining us today. And then if we could also hear from our panelists, if you want to elaborate a little more on who you are, what you do.
All right. Thank you so very much. Again, my apologies for running a little bit late. In fact, let me tell you why I think it's important that we have these conversations. I think, the future is in the hands of young people, and everyone needs to understand why the census is affecting our community, especially what we call, the hard to count communities. And obviously in rural Kansas and any other place, rural Oklahoma, rural Texas, rural everywhere in the United States, it's extremely important that people know why the census, is going to change your community for the next 10 years. In fact, I do think that it's not only the next 10 years. I think the consequences of not doing it right, might impact our communities for the next 20 years. So the reason I do this, and I want people to talk about the census, because we have an opportunity. I think in 2010 it was done, but it was not done correctly. I think we have an opportunity to actually make it happen better this time around. And I love the fact that we have a lot of young people involved. You guys are, making things happen all the time. And now more than ever, there's a lot of moving parts, but you guys are taking initiative. And that's what makes me excited to be here, because when I see young people, taking an initiative, I believe, the future is going to be extremely bright. So, I do it because I care. I do it because I know there's a lot of people out there that's afraid to talk about census, afraid to participate because of, their status, because sometimes they don't really understand why the census could change our communities for the good. Also, it could be an impact that could probably do a lot of negativity as well. A lot of programs, a lot of issues now more than ever. So that's the reason I love to talk about census. And I'm not just in a way, let me tell you, I'm a census lover. I love the census because if we do it right, then we have an opportunity to a better future for not only the people that's here today, but everyone in our community. So thank you for the invite. And let's do a little bit of introduction. I know you guys already talked a little bit about yourselves, but tell us why. And we can start with Stacy, and we'll go around if you want to. And tell me why you're doing the census, why you're having this conversation. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the reason why I decided to participate in this panel is because, like I said in my bio, I want to be an advocate for people who can't advocate for themselves. So that means I need to educate, inform people who do not know what the census is or anything in particular. And so me as a first generation, I'm the first in my family to know about these things. And so it's very important for young people to know about everything that's going on, especially the census, because it's going to benefit them and future generations that are about to come.
That is pretty cool. Thank you, Stacy. We can jump to Jasenia. I think they put Yesenia. Is it with an E or with an A? Yesenia Cano.
Yeah, it's Yesenia Cano. First, I want to give a big shout out to Mrs. Mora, Miss Terry Mora. She's the one that got us into contact with Jaysha and got us into this panel. And she's amazing. She's probably one of our biggest mentors. She's very big on census, and we went to a conference in Chicago early February where it was about the census. And I went to a panel for census, and I learned so much that it opened up my eyes that like we just cannot be underrepresented. We have to make sure that we are represented. Yeah.
From Jaysha too. Could you tell us, because you're very passionate about getting involved and connecting all the dots. I know that that's important, but why the census? Go ahead, Jaysha.
Sure thing. I can talk about the census again. So I am an Indigenous person. I come from 5 tribes, Seminole, Creek, Pawnee, Omaha, and Iowa. And when it comes to population data for my community, not just the 5 tribes I come from, but overall, a lot of us natives and Alaskan, what do they call it? American Indians, Alaskan natives, we're like considered a speck of the United States population. We're approximately less than 2%, just a little under 2% of the United States population. And even though it is really small, we're not insignificant. And sometimes in some of these studies, research for healthcare, research for education, even research in the media, we are called statistically insignificant. And that's really hurtful because those numbers aren't just numbers on a paper. It's people, it's real lives. I represent, a whole slew of stories just like my children do. So this is for me a personal interest because we matter, everyone matters. And so that representation reflected in the census data is just as important, especially to tribal communities who utilize federal dollars in numerous ways. And in thinking about the pandemic, the CARES distribution, some of our communities were able to receive, but when it comes to tribal nations, the CARES funding that came through, some of it was based on census data. So within your tribal communities, your tribal registry or the citizenship, your enrollment departments might have larger numbers than what is reflected in the census data. And so if the United States is using census data instead of your tribal enrollment numbers, that means you are not getting as much money as you should be getting. So again, visibility in the census is incredibly important. And that's why I'm so proud or honored to be a part of this particular panel with these young leaders here to think about, what does money, power, and representation look like in the census? So thank you for the question, Jorge. Excuse me, Enrique.
Thank you, Jaysha. Thank you. You changed my name. That's good. I've been called so many things over the years. A big shout out to Mrs. Mora. I got to say it this way, though. I love you. And, my respect and my admiration for everything you do. You've been doing it for a long time, and you push us to be better every day. So nothing but love and respect for you, Mrs. Mora. Jorge, what's the deal with the census? Why do you want to let people know about what's going on with the census? Adelante, go ahead.
And being part of a minority, I know, we have a lot of misrepresentation. So and learning, because I didn't know what the census was till recently when I went, of how important it is into the conference with me, Yessie, and Stacy, because the main focus was voting and census. So it helped me learn a lot, the importance of showing representation for the people of color who have no voice, who feel silenced. Yeah.
All right, thank you, young man. Well, let's go ahead and jump to the first questions. And let me tell you a little more about myself. By the way, I'm an immigrant, and I am passionate to say that not only information about the census is good, but we got lots of more moving parts that make an impact in the future of our great communities. And I hope my hope today is that everyone that is watching is doing something. It's not enough to talk about it, okay, but rather doing something. That's what to me it makes a big difference. So the world doesn't change with what I say; the world changes with what I do, and that will be my biggest deal today. I wanted to challenge every single one of you that is going to be watching today to make it happen, to take action, to be involved in the community, get involved in your college or school, wherever you might be. But it's extremely important that you know that as well. So it's not enough just to know what's going on, but rather taking action. That's the key to everything that we got going on in a great community. So let's go ahead and do the first question, and we're gonna go just the same order. I don't know if Jaisha is going to be answering some of these questions, but hopefully, she won't call me Jorge again. I'm just kidding. All right, we just got to break the ice. That's just the way it's going to work, as everybody looks a little tense. All right. We're going to do the first question. We're going to start with Stacy, then we jump to Yesenia, and then we jump to Jorge, so we can go ahead and get this going. So the first question is going to be, what does power look like in your community, and how can the census help your community build power? That's a very deep question. So we're going to start, on my left, and let's go ahead and get it going then. Let me see. I can see here. Hold on a second. All right. Go ahead, Yesenia. Go ahead. Stacy, go ahead.
To me?
Yeah, Stacy, go ahead.
Oh, me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't see the screen.
I thought you said
No. Stacy, go ahead.
Okay. So what power looks like to me in my community is the young people, the youth, the students. In my community, they're very, very active in everything, in every event that there's held in the community. So when I think of power, I think of the youth. And the good thing is that there's a Halo group in Hooker that they're part of the Chamber of Commerce. So there's a voice in the board for the minority group in Hooker. And so that's always been one of the things that we wanted to change, and it's thankfully happened. And also power, also like for the census, what it does is for census, it counts the people that there is in every state. So depending on the number of people in a state, it depends on the number of seats you get in Congress. So in a way, I see it as a way where we get to elect people who can be our voices in a federal level. And that's what we really need at this point, is somebody who will understand us, who hears our voice and puts it out there in a federal presence.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. We're going to jump to Yesenia. Go ahead, Yesenia. The same question. What does power look like in your community, and how can the census help your community build power? Go ahead.
Okay, so what I think that power looks like in our community, it kind of goes back to us being very high in agriculture. There's a lot of agriculture all around us, and I think that kind of goes, the power kind of goes towards there. So like, for example, like if a rancher had to cross his cattle over Highway 54, the cops would be so willing to be able to stop both sides, stop all the traffic for that rancher to get his cattle over. That's how much power that they have. While a store clerk, he wouldn't be able to do that. So that's where I see the power comes from, as well as at OPSU, where we go to college. Everything is pretty much agricultural based. Everything that's promoted is agriculture. And so in our community, I think that's where the power goes. And then the census, how it can help us like build more power, is it can show representation. So like minority groups, we are powerful. We just, a lot of times we silence ourselves because the majority, which is the Anglos, they do most of the talking and most of the decision making, but we can't let that happen. We have to show that we are willing to step up and represent our community as well, our POC community.
With that in mind, I gotta ask you this real quick. You were saying, that sometimes we don't do much. Okay, we've been in the generation after generation. You guys are going to college, getting educated. Okay, so why do you see as the biggest challenge that we have as a community? Let's talk specifically about the Latino the Hispanic community. Why do you think Latino Hispanic community haven't been able to organize yet and take action and change these things that we don't really agree with?
I would specifically say it's because of our parents they're our leaders, they're who we seek, and they have a language barrier, and so that language barrier always it backfires. It prevents them from asking those questions or going up and talking about it. So they always kind of step back and they're like, no, well, they know the language, they can make the decisions, when it shouldn't be like that. And so like I grew up in a family that education is power. That's what we believe. And so that's where I have gotten all of my inspiration, and where I stand, and I say that this is it. We have to start representing our Hispanic community.
All right, thank you. I really think it's very interesting. I really think that we must talk about not just the fact that we're going to change the world, but rather how we intentionally, get this information and we transform whatever information we have into action, so we can little by little organize ourselves and actually change the world. But we're going to go back to that. That's very interesting. Jorge, the same question: what does power look like in your community, and how the census help our community build power? Go ahead.
Well, from my experience, power is minimal for mostly people of color. So why is this? Well, as Yessi said, many parents have communication like barriers, especially with language. And those who have language barriers have lack of access to the tools that help you understand what the census is. Because youth people can explain it, but sometimes it can lead to misinformation, especially for those who don't know a lot about it. And how can we change this? We can change this by going to those misinformed communities, to those people who have language barriers, and translate or inform those who do not understand why others are being misrepresented or have lack of communication.
Let me ask you, you guys, and before we jump to the next question, I don't know exactly how much time we have, but I think it's interesting. Do you guys think that there's plenty of information? We live in a technology world, right? We have Google, and they say that about 98% of everything we need to know as a society, we can find it in Google. Do you think it's a cultural barrier? Do you think is not enough information that is going to first generation, in this case, Latino minorities, not just Latinos, but everyone else? Do you think it is maybe lack of trying to connect with the community? Is that what's happening, guys? Stacy, go ahead. Stacy, you still muted. Can't hear you. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so my answer would be the miscommunication that's going on. I believe it's just the not having the knowledge, because it's not being presented to us because we don't have the resources. And that puts a lot of disadvantage for especially minority groups, because if you don't have those resources, there's no way that you're going to know about it. And sure, you can look it up on Google, but you'll never know what's the reliable source that you're supposed to go to.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. And we're going to go back to that later on, because we got to get going with the second question. And the second question, and this is going to be for Stacy as well. What does more money for your community look like for you, and how does the census help with that? Go ahead.
So more money for me in my community, I see a lot more or less potholes in the road. We have terrible roads here in Oklahoma. I could just see us going on a drive smoothly with no trouble. So that's one thing that I could see, that I can envision for the future. And also funding schools, and especially for me, since I'm focusing on the public health field, I'm more concerned about the healthcare facilities and the programs. So that includes WIC, Medicare, Medicaid Part B, things like that. And so that puts there's a lot of minority groups who just don't get that kind of resource. And especially for people who live in poverty as well, they need those resources and they need to be accessible, especially during this pandemic, which is very important at this point. And it just has to be more invested right now.
Okay. Thank you, Stacy. That makes a lot of sense. So the same question, Yesenia Cano, and what does more money, excuse me, for your community look like for you, and how does the census help? Go ahead, Yesenia.
As a future educator, so I put myself into the classroom and I look at the resources that I will probably have and probably won't have, and that is based on the funding of the census. So it's very important for more funding for schools, along with like better schools. There's many schools that they don't even have hot water. So things as simple as that, having warm water. I know we went to a school that didn't have warm water, and also handicap accessibility. So I have a disease that sometimes it confines me to not being able to go up and down the stairs. Yet and that meant that I couldn't go that day. I couldn't go to my classes because there was so many stairs. So I would have to stay on the first floor, and so that's very important for me to be able to get that out there, because that's only my experience, but there's so many other experiences. Along with my mom, she's a custodian, and she has told me that our school here, it's pretty old. It's very old. It's more than 100 years old. And she says that when they're taking off wax and they are like reapplying the wax and everything, they are exposing themselves to asbestos, and that's not good. It's
That is not good.
So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely better schools, educational funding. That's where it's at, and along with better pay for teachers. I see a lot of teachers around the community here. They have to have 2 or 3 jobs because they can't make ends meet. Yet they are seeking to help further these students, but they're not able to have their full attention in the education because they have to worry about paying the bills. So that's a big deal. And also a big thing in Guyman is that there's a lot of emergency certified teachers, and that doesn't really sit well with me, because you're sending your student to school to get educated, but a lot of the teachers don't have the education that they need. So a good thing maybe would be going to into a route that enables those emergency certified teachers to get their educational degrees, maybe through funding, maybe through a new program, something like that.
Well, thank you so much. I think that you're right. I think that everybody needs to have the same opportunities. And sometimes, we don't understand where the money is coming from. So I think the real head count of the population this time around is going to make a huge difference. And I'm so excited to see you guys, taking initiative again. So Jorge, let's go ahead and do the same question. What does more money for you community look like for you, and how does the census help? Go ahead.
To follow up on Yessi, I'm also I'm an elementary education major, so I know Oklahoma doesn't have the best relation with paying teachers. I know we ranked almost, I think, 50th, so that says a lot, especially with other teachers having other jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Some have to get student loans, and some of them, with underfunding, some teachers have to pay out of their own pocket for student supplies. So that's my main focus is education, because of it being so important, especially with educating the youth and showing them about, because I know a lot of parents did not, immigrant parents did not have the education they wanted. So that's why it's really important for the students to be educated, so they can educate their parents, their friends, their family members. And
all right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Jorge. Some of the things that that are basically going on in our communities. When you mention all these things that Yesenia was talking about, I'm thinking you do have to have the same opportunities, right? And this is one of the beauties of being in the greatest country on the planet. With that in mind, the census, make sure that we real count of the population. So we have the funds, we have the money that is providing what you guys were just mentioning right now, which is education, open doors, and education is the best tool you're going to have so you can be successful in life and in society. So I totally agree with you guys. We're going to jump to our third question. What does representation in your community look like? Okay, and how can the census ensure full representation for your community? And we're going to go real quick, and we're going to start with Stacy. Go ahead, Stacy.
Okay, so representation for me, I know last time we did this back in 2010, we were undercounted, and I believe that it's because of the rumor that was going around about this citizens question about your legal status, and so that's why it discouraged a lot of people to not do the census, because they were afraid to take that questionnaire and send it back to a government agency. But what we need to do is educate people about this rumor that is just not true. It's not going to be on there, and it's illegal. And by law, it's that your information is protected. No government agency will have access to that information. Only the Census Bureau will be able to gather that information for only the census. And so I believe that with the census and with people knowing that the citizens question is not going to be on there, that there's going to be more representation, more for the minority groups. And so for the next 10 years or more, there's going to be more resources, opportunities, and it affects everybody, not just the generations to come. It affects everybody.
So, Stacy, you think right now, as we speak, there's a lot of people out there in your community, for instance, specifically, that is afraid to do the census because they think that information is going to go to the federal government and they're going to maybe do something with it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and actually we did a little community project during a parent-teacher conference in Guyman, Oklahoma, and there was a lot of Hispanic families that were very hesitant to talk to me about the census, and they kept asking me, are they going to ask about my status, my legal status? And I had to reassure them that they don't have to worry about it, and I showed them the website where it says that they are protected by law. That their information will not be shared with anybody, not even the government.
Which is absolutely correct, right? So you can't really be afraid if you're watching right now. You don't have to worry about that. The law protects you, and you just got to get it done. So same question, Yesenia Cano, which is, what does representation in your community look like, and how can the census ensure full representation for your community? Go ahead.
Okay, so what it looks like currently, I would say that a lot of who represent us are not actually the majority. Like the majority here would be Hispanics.
Okay.
But I don't think that we're very well represented. I think a lot of the Anglos are more towards that, representing the community. I would even say as far as like our senators and our representatives. Most of them are Anglo, and so that kind of like shocks me. I'm like, okay, so are we being represented as a whole, or are they just representing one part of our population? So, and that's really important. And the census, that's where it comes. Like, as long as everybody like fills it out. Our Hispanic representation, our POC, just anybody in general, that's where the representation comes from. And as long as that keeps growing, people will start seeing, oh, okay, well, maybe they do have to be represented. And yes, we do, because representation matters. Another thing is, I had something else. Oh yeah, to piggyback off of Stacy, a lot of the questions that we do face are like, is the citizen status, like, is it on there? And it is not. Everything is confidential. I mean, I wouldn't be saying that if it wasn't, because I have a lot of family members that would potentially suffer through that. So everything's confidential. But yeah.
That is
so
absolutely correct. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So with this census, we see that POC people, the communities are growing. We are here and we're here to represent.
That is awesome. Thank you, Jaseni. Thank you for all the comments, and I will encourage everyone not only to participate and get the census done in your community, but also let's get this conversation going. Let's talk to everyone in your community. You know, everybody counts. Your aunt, your mom, your dad, your grandpa, your everyone, your neighbor. And I will challenge everyone also to take action. And maybe you have 10 people, text them. Hey, have you done the census yet? If you haven't, can you please do me a favor? I recommend people, and I'm going to take up on, myself to do this. And I'm going to take advantage of this platform. But we got to keep this conversation going every single day. Tell your friends, your cousins, your tia, your everyone that you know, hey, can you please help me and get the census done? Because if you don't, then our communities are going to suffer. Same question. I'm going to go with Jorge. Jorge, same question, which is, what does representation in your community look like? And how can the census ensure full representation for your community? Go ahead, Jorge.
Well, representation in my community is very important because people of color make a great part of the population. And people of color are already misrepresented. So that is why the census is so important, to show that we are here and will be part of the count. How can we help? We can help by going to the part of communities that are misrepresented and inform them on the great impact that the census has on their future generations. Or we can also educate those who do not understand how people of color are being misrepresented. Representation starts with ourselves, because we have to learn about everything that we know to be able to show everyone else what we wanted to know. And in 2050, I think it's really important. Hispanics will be the majority population, so we have to keep advocating for them and showing that we are here. And also with the youth, like people say, oh, youth is only a certain population. They are a certain population, but they are 100% of our future.
You're absolutely right. 100% of our future. And that makes, everyone, that makes me concerned when we don't have enough people doing the right thing for the right reasons. And I'm so thankful to see you guys, taking this platform. And I know you guys are talking about the census, and a lot more things are going on in our society today. But specifically with the census, we have an opportunity, and the opportunity is to make it right. Okay, there's a lot of money, a lot of funding that is not coming to our communities, and we're still paying the consequences of the census in 2010. So now we have a little bit of time. It's about 5:17. I think they told me till 5:30ish. So I want to talk about one of the aspects that this census is so different than any other census in the past. We have so much technology, and I truly believe, it's my humble opinion, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that we're Latinos, the Hispanic community, we're about maybe 5 years behind sometimes. You guys obviously not, but my mom, for instance, she to a year and a half ago, she opened up a Facebook account. So my question is going to have to go with technology. It's so easy right now. It's so much easier than it was back in 2010 to do the census. Now you can go to the website, you can call it in if you want to. There's so many languages, I believe up to 70 some, I believe. I might be lying. But the issue here is that it's so easy to do. So we don't have any excuses not to do it. So how we tell our members of communities like Guyman, Oklahoma, like in the Panhandle, hey, you are able to get it done and get it done now, and within 5 minutes you'll be done. If you go to using your telephone, or you can use your computer, or you can have your daughter or whoever to help you out. So what would you tell the community about using this technology, because it's so important, so effective, that we must take advantage so we can do it right? And I want to start with Stacy. Stacy, go ahead.
So it is way easier to do the census now, especially with technology evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So they now have a webpage where you can go online and do the census questionnaire on there, or you can call if you want to talk to a person. You can talk to them, or you could just get it by mail and then send it back. I mean, there's various ways now to turn in your census and make yourself counted for your family, and then of course spread the word. I know Facebook is a big way to get things out there. So I've always been putting out census information through Facebook or by social media in general.
Yeah, and I'm gonna repeat. I'm gonna give everyone right now, and I know we have it in the screen. On the screen, as far as the address on where you go to is www.my2020census.gov. Okay, and it's very easy. You go in there, and literally, it will probably take you just about 5 minutes, and that's what we're trying to accomplish today. We're trying to make sure that we get this information, and we see that young people like you guys, are pushing for a better future, and the better future starts by doing the census. So the same thing, I'm going to go with Jeseni. Can you tell me how can we take advantage, and how do we communicate the fact that we have a lot more tools and way easier than it was back in the day 10 years ago, for instance, as far as the technology and getting your census completed? Go ahead.
A big thing that I would say is that the census, they're doing it online, and along with this, it's put into a lot of different languages. So it's more easier. It's more accessible for people to be able to fill it out. But yes, there was a comment that was popped on the screen that said that a lot of minority groups, they don't have the same access to technology as the majority does. And so that can also conflict with undercounts. But as long as you have a cell phone, try to do it.
And we all do, right? We all have technology. Sometimes we even have 2 or 3 of those darn things, and we always on Facebook and gossiping sometimes, I think. But it's very easy, right?
Yes. And another great thing of the online setting is that there's a map setting where you can see so far the counts that have been put in. And I think that's amazing. I like to go in there and check that out because you can see where the people are responding to the census and where it's being undercounted. So that's the communities that we have to advocate for and tell them that the census is important, to fill it out, to go out there and let them know that it is.
All right. Well, the same comment. Thank you so much, Yeseni. Jorge, what do you think we got to tell people about technology? So easy to do, so easy to get it accomplished. Go ahead.
Well, another thing is like we just have to emphasize that your information is confidential, because I feel like that's what holds a lot of people back, because they're scared. The government agency can know where I live. They can know my status, my social, my card number. I feel like that's just what's holding them back. Because a lot of people have cell phones, so they can call in their census. So I just feel like we have to advocate for the information that's gonna stay safe, because that's what for when we did the census in Guyman, we would ask, do you want to do the census? And a lot of them would be even afraid just to put their address. Okay. So that's what we have to put out there, that your information is confidential.
Confidential. You don't have to worry about the government getting a hold of it.
Yeah.
I do have a quick question. We're gonna do one more round. It's about 5:23. I will remind everyone that please do us a favor, share this information, and not only that, but if you haven't done the census, go ahead and get it done. It's pretty easy to do, and it won't take you more than probably 5 minutes. And of course, if you do have questions, there are very, very so many tools out there that are provided, for us to understand. But this, panel today is extremely important, because we have young people that wants to do the right thing for the right reasons, and want to not only congratulate you guys, but everyone else is behind this project, because this is what we need more and more and more to get this conversation going. 100%. So the audience got a question for us and said, what is the toughest, the hardest part of this project? And I'm going to briefly go and Stacy, Jeseni, and Jorge. Go ahead, Stacy.
I don't think there was a hardest part to do with this project. We all communicate very well. Everything went pretty smoothly, so I wouldn't say there was any hard part. The only difficult part that we probably had was just answering the questions, trying to be as well, not specific, but trying to explain what we truly are passionate about, why we're talking about the census.
I think, Stacey, let me clarify that real quick. I think what they mean by this question is, what's the toughest or the hardest part of this project, like getting the census done and getting the information done for people to go ahead and participate. I think that's what they mean by that.
Oh, okay. So the hardest would be, like Jorge said, was trying to get people to participate, especially the Latino Hispanic community, to put their information down. They would just look at me strangely, thinking like, why is she asking for my information? But we have to reassure many people it's confidential, it's okay, it's protected by law.
Okay, so so information, and the consistency in how we put that information out there for everyone to get 100% clear that your information is not going to be shared with anyone. So that makes sense. Jeseni, go ahead. So what is the hardest part of this project as far as getting people to participate and to get the census done?
I'll pretty much piggyback off of what Stacy said, to reassure them that everything is confidential. ICE isn't going to get the information. Just put that out there. It's very confidential. I know there was a lot of rumors, especially this past year, saying that since the citizen question was going to be on there, it is not. It is not on there. It's completely confidential. Another big thing is that a lot of people tend not to really want to be a part of projects and stuff. So we have to really tell them that representation matters, that everybody's representation matters. Because if we could have an undercount, that means there's no funding. That equals that's the equivalent of no funding. And with no funding, then you have to kind of stretch the money that they do give out. So that's important as well.
All right. Thank you, Jeseni. Go ahead. The same thing. What is the toughest, the hardest challenge for this project, Jorge, go ahead.
Well, the toughest thing would definitely be because people can say they're going to do the census, but some of them don't really do it. You have to stay committed to do it. You have to you have to keep pushing people to do it, to actually fill it out. Because you can get the written one, but it can sometimes just sit there. You have to really commit to when you do it, you also commit to teaching others on how to do it and why they should do it.
Okay. What do you guys think of, you guys have a lot of friends. So you guys talk to your friends about the census and what your friends say about the census? Because, I was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was very surprised that I talked to a young man. He was 28, I think, married with a couple of kids, but he didn't know what the census was. And to me, that was pretty alarming. But at the same time, I think that's what's happening in our community, especially in rural, parts of the country. In this case, Guyman is not going to be the exception. The Panhandle is not going to be the exception. Oklahoma is not going to be the exception. I think it's happening everywhere in the country. So what are the rest of your friends are saying, regarding the census? Have you guys talked to them about that? Stacy?
It's just not being informed about the census. Many people don't know about it. They get something from the mail, they fill it out, and then they send it back without even knowing what it is. And so it's just something about just not putting information out there what the census is, or they just put it off and say, okay, it's just another thing that I have to do, so who cares, I'll send it in. No, but it's really, really important. That's why we need to get very in depth about the census and get that information out there, because it's important. It's not only affecting you, it's affecting everybody else.
So would you say that we have to create consistency about the messaging, how much we tell people about the census, one time, not two times, but rather almost every day. Because I know I drive people insane when hey, have you done the census? Hey, have you done the census? And people, I do it later. No, can you do it right now? And I will call you tomorrow because I want to make sure you got the census done. So it's going to take a lot of discipline, a lot of consistency. Yesenia, what do you think of that? Have you talked to your friends? What are your friends briefly tell me what has been the experience with your friends? What did they tell you about the census?
They've been very supportive. As soon as I saw them, I remember one of my good friends. She walked into my office and she needed some help with some of her homework, and I stopped her right in the middle of like actually helping her with her homework, and I was like, "Wait, have you filled out the census?" And she was like, "I haven't." And so then I got out of my chair and she sat there and she filled it out. And like all of my friends, I'm like, "Have you filled it out? Let me know when you do. Let me know if you don't." And to my siblings, to my older brother and sister, I pushed them pretty hard. My brother, he was like, "Well, what is a census?" I explained it to him and he was like, "Okay, send me the link. I'll fill it out. Like, stop nagging me." And my sister, the same thing. I told her, I was like, "If you don't have time, send me like all the information that has to go on there and I'll fill it out for you."
That is so cool. That is so awesome. I love that idea. It's so important that we do that and we keep on reminding people how important the census is. Jorge, the same question. So what are your friends are telling you? What do they say about the census when you talk about the census with them?
Well, two of my friends are already here with me in the panel, So we stay pretty active. We push them to keep remembering their parents, their aunts, their sisters, brothers, to fill out the census. And like and both of us are also part of the Halo group. So I already have friends there too. And then Miss Moore, a great leader, she already guides us to push for the census.
Well, thank you, Jorge. I'm gonna one more time tell everyone that give you the most important thing that we could do. Sometimes we wanted to change the world, but we must change our communities first. It starts in our home, and then from our home goes to our community. And the census is so important. It could shape the future of our great communities, especially in rural communities in the U.S. Oklahoma is not different. Okay, I think we have an opportunity to get a great census, okay, done this time around. And I will encourage you to keep on the conversation. I know with a lot of people out there, when you don't know something, you get like really like scared, and there's a lot of fear. But we don't want you to have fear. We've been talking about census for a long time, and this time around, I think it's important. You don't have to fear that your information is going to be given to anyone. Your information is going to stay safe and is going to make an impact. With that in mind, I'm going to welcome back Jaysha. Thank you so much. And she is back. She's going to announce some people that want some gifts. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much to our panel and our amazing MC this afternoon. Thank you to those of you who are able to join us today for this English panel. We will have a Spanish-only panel beginning at 6 p.m. So if you have relatives that can only speak Spanish, please bring them back on at 6, and we'll have more from this panel as well as our MC. And what phase of the census are we? So the census was extended because of COVID-19. There are so many civil rights organizations that have been pushing for equity, that have been pushing to ensure the federal law is being upheld when it comes to confidentiality. And so those same advocates, same organizations pushed to the federal government to make sure that the census was getting the amount of time it needs to ensure an accurate count. So October 31st is when the census will be completed, or is as far as we know, it's October 31st now. So even though it seems like there's time, we still regarding this particular area of our state, the Panhandle, we have rates that are well below the national average, and Oklahoma itself is well below the national average regarding response rates. I just looked up for the 3 counties, Beaver, Texas, and Cimarron. You have some of the lowest response rates, which means not enough people have been doing the census. So there's a lot of ground to cover between now and October 31st. So I'm so glad that we were able to connect with this amazing group over at OPSU, these Halo students, to get the census out in your community. Just like y'all have repeated on this panel, there's so many folks that don't even know what the census is. So you can tell them till you're blue in the face, do the census, but they don't even know what it is, you know. And it's not just enough to be like, oh, well, it's a physical count. I mean, telling them how it impacts their dollars, their communities, the shaping of the community is so very important. So yeah, we're kind of, I would say maybe halfway, but we're a lot closer to the end than we are in the beginning. So we need to make sure everybody's counted. I will go ahead and announce our winners. Thank you to those of you who participated today, who made comments, who shared the event. Our first winner, well, and before I announce the winners, if you hear your name called, please message us in our private messages on the Together Oklahoma Facebook page, your email and your address. We will be able to send a gift card to you virtually or physically, depending on what you prefer. So our winners for today are Uriel Luna, Laura Grace Parman Flores, that was Laura Grace Parman Flores, and Roman Trejo. And I apologize if I totally butchered the pronunciation of your name. My name gets butchered all the time, even though it's 5 letters. But yes, you 3 are the winners for this panel. For this event today. Thank you so much. Yes, you won. So please message us, private message to Together Oklahoma, and send us your email and your physical mailing address, and then how you prefer to have that gift card sent to you. So I will go ahead and offer, we started a little late, so we're kind of within the hour here still. I'll just say that, actually, I'll go ahead and let you all, if anybody has any final remarks, just real briefly, maybe, I heard, some action items from some of you, but if you, yes, Uriel, you want a gift card. Please private message us your email and your physical address. Thank you, Jessica, for popping up the comments on the screen. They're so fun to read at the same time. So we'll go with Stacy, Yessi, Jorge, and then Enrique. Your call to action that can easily be done in your community right now. Stacy.
An action that can be done right now is go to your social media, advertise it on your stories, on your posts. Keep talking to your family, to your friends about the census. See if they filled it out, because the deadline's coming sooner. And so I just encourage, also for the 6 p.m. panel, I encourage, if you have any family who only speaks Spanish and don't know what the census is, to tell them to tune in on Facebook, on YouTube, or whatever platform they want to.
Go ahead, Yessi.
Okay. A big thing that I would say currently is, well, we're pretty much still in quarantine. Everybody is still in their houses. A lot of times you don't know what to do. You're just binge watching Netflix or something. Instead of that, pull out your phone, text a friend, have you filled out the census? You know what the census is. Shoot them the link that's down there, my2020census.gov, and make sure that they fill it out. Make sure that they know why it's important, and make sure that you're getting the information out there.
Thank you, Jorge.
The same with social media. Since right now a lot of people are in quarantine, a lot of them are on social media. But also, like, when you go out to the store, out to do to work, because some people are still working. Just ask. Have you done the census? But not only ask if they have done it, tell them why they should do it.
Thank you. And finally, Enrique.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you, Jaysha. I want to thank Together Oklahoma. I want to thank Halo LPSU, Mrs. Mora, for the opportunity, and I want to say congratulations to you guys, because you guys are leaders, and this country is better off with people like you. The other thing is, I really truly believe in my heart that we can stop talking about the census. We must tell everyone about the census every opportunity that we have. Not only that, but we can't really assume that everybody knows, okay, what the census is. I was referring to the young man that I talked to about a couple of weeks ago, 28 years old. a wife, a kid, and they don't know what the census is. So sometimes we assume just because we know, okay, we think everybody knows, and it's so simple. My census was done in like probably it's 7 minutes, 8 minutes, and you don't have to be like extremely like don't have to have a lot of knowledge about computers. So if you want to do the right thing for the right reasons, keep on telling people about the census. Tell them why it's so important. You can call, you can do it on your computer. It's very, very, very easy to do. So don't stop talking about the census. And one last thing in regarding the date. Latinos, Latinas, Hispanic community will like to leave everything last minute. Don't wait last minute, even though we have to October 31st. We can't. Let's not do that. Let's get it done right now. Right now is the time to get it done. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Yes, the time is now. Get your census completed, get all the information. Like all these wonderful people had said, there's very tangible ways that you can get this information out there, that you can complete this information. And for anybody who can't vote, filling out the 2020 census is a way to participate in democracy and bring fair political representation to your community. A census will show what your community looks like, and there's power in numbers. So we need more numbers, more than we've had before. If any of you have been watching the whole program, 3 out of 4 houses in Oklahoma only participated in the census. That means a quarter of our population was not counted. And thinking about the lack of funding to schools, the lack of hospitals in rural Oklahoma, nobody could have foreseen that a viral pandemic would hit our communities like they have. So we're kind of working with, like, Enrique said, the consequences far exceed just the 10-year span in between the census counts. So that's why it's so important that we recognize 100% of the future here. We're working on the generations to come as well as the now. So again, appreciate all of you for being here. We'll be back on for Spanish only panel at 6 p.m. Together Oklahoma Facebook page, Together Oklahoma Twitter, and Together Oklahoma YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you in a few.
Thank you, everyone.